From tanks and artillery, the Russian armed forces are one of the world's largest armed forces. But how large is Russia's military? Stay tuned to find out the military strength of a superpower country. Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we will be talking about the military strengths of Russia. Before we get into the video, kindly note that the information provided in this video is for educational purposes only. Without further ado, let's dive in. When it comes to military might, the United States, Russia, and China are regarded as the world's three most powerful nations, with the United States holding the indisputable top spot. Despite this, Russia still has a lot of arrows in its quiver, including a huge nuclear arsenal of 1,550 deployed nuclear weapons. Leaving the nuclear weapons aside, Russian military researcher Alexander Goltz told DW that the US has an overwhelming edge in conventional forces, including a significantly superior Navy and Air Force. In any conventional class with Russia, China would have the numerical advantage. However, things are less apparent with other places. The military expert cautions, however, that ranking countries by military power is more or less pointless, as the efficiency of armed forces is dependent on the goals established by the nation's leaders. Moscow has been a great power since the 19th century, rising to superpower status during the Cold War. Following the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the newly formed Russian Federation mainly withdrew from the international arena, which was plagued by severe economic issues. The Russian economy has only improved to a limited level after the collapse of the Soviet Union, but under Vladimir Putin, Moscow has managed to establish a new military program backed by a sizable budget. The country's armed forces have been upgraded from the Air Force to the Navy with supersonic cruise missiles and other armaments developed as part of the effort, while the Western alliance continued to doubt Russia's military capabilities. At the request of the Assad regime, Russia intervened in the Syrian crisis, giving Moscow the opportunity to show off its new hypersonic weapons arsenal to the rest of the world with disastrous results. Given the economic struggle and Western criticism, Putin's Russia has modernized its military, giving the Kremlin the confidence to exercise its muscle around the world, from the Syrian crisis to Venezuela and Afghanistan. What are Russia's capabilities? Even in the aftermath of the Soviet Union's demise in the early 1990s, Moscow maintained a sizable nuclear arsenal, mainly preserving its deterrence capability. The Russian Federation's armed forces, sometimes known as the Russian Armed Forces, are the military forces of the Russian Federation. The ground forces, Navy, and Aerospace Force are the three branches of the military. The strategic rocket forces and the airborne troops are two separate branches of the military. The Russian Armed Forces, along with the Border Troop of Federal Security Service, the National Guard, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Federal Protective Service, the Foreign Intelligence Service, the Main Directorate of General Staff, and the Ministry of Emergency Situations Defense make up Russia's military services and are directly under control of the Russian Security Council. With roughly 1 million active duty people, the world's fifth largest and at least 2 million reserve members, the Russian Armed Forces are one of the world's largest armed forces. The Russian Armed Forces, being the world's second most powerful military, have the world's greatest stockpile of nuclear weapons. It has the world's second largest ballistic missile submarine fleet and is one of only 3 countries with strategic bombers. The Russian Armed Forces possesses the world's second most formidable Air Force and Navy fleet. Russia will spend $61.7 billion on defense in 2020, ranking 4th in the world. According to the Federation of American Scientists, Russia possesses 1,765 deployed strategic warheads, 2,700 non-deployed strategic and deployed and non-deployed tactical warheads, and another 2,510 warheads awaiting dismantlement as of January 2017. The strategic rocket forces are in charge of Russia's land-based nuclear weapons, while the Navy is in charge of submarine-based missiles and the Aerospace Force of air-launched weapons. Russia's military doctrine views NATO expansion as a threat to the Russian Federation and reserves the ability to deploy nuclear weapons in the event of conventional aggression that threatens the state's existence. Throughout the late 1990s, the country's nuclear forces were adequately funded into accordance with this. The number of active intercontinental ballistic missiles and warheads has decreased over time, in part due to the arms control agreement with the United States, and in part due to inadequate maintenance spending. But this has been offset by the deployment of new missiles as proof against missile defense. In comparison to any other global power, the country now boasts the biggest stockpile of nuclear weapons. The Russian Air Force is frequently referred to as the world's second most powerful after the United States. According to the Russian defense military, Russia has been able to add more than 1,000 aircrafts to its air force in the last 10 years, including Su-35. Belarus, a Russian ally that borders Ukraine, has received Su-35s, the country's most technologically advanced warplanes. Only two other countries, the United States and China, have strategic bombers in their air force. The Russian Navy, like its air force, is one of the most powerful sea forces in the world after the United States. Moscow is able to operate the world's second largest fleet of ballistic missile-carrying submarines. With over 3 million people, including reservists, the country's land force is likewise powerful, making it one of the world's largest. Aside from the nuclear weapons, there is one area in which Russia is unquestionably the best. According to Felgenhauer, the Kremlin recently declared that Russia has more tanks than any other country in the world. Following the conclusion of the Cold War, most European governments curtailed their tank capabilities, focusing instead on wars with terrorists and guerrilla groups. According to Felgenhauer, this puts them at a significant disadvantage if a land battle breaks out in Europe. Russia has a logistical advantage over the West in the case of an all-European war. Whereas NATO's entire strength would take months to deploy, Russia will be able to bring in troops on a considerably shorter time frame. According to American military experts, Russia has the world's greatest tank arsenal, but its T-72B3 tanks are also bolstered by a new thermal optics technology for fighting in the dark, as well as guided missiles with a longer range than any other tank. The country's next-generation ballistic missiles are the Iskander-M rockets, which were completed under Putin's supervision. Aside from the sheer size of Russia's military, the country has also managed to build a disciplined army. While conscripts still account for roughly 30% of Russia's entire force, the country's main army currently consists of around 400,000 well-paid and well-trained soldiers. Russian leadership gives lower-level officers a great deal of authority, something that is rarely seen in civilian leadership. It has also improved morale and mobility among the ranks of the military. According to Russia's defense minister Sergei K, 92% of Russian Air Force troops and 62% of Russian Navy personnel got combat experience as a result of the country's deadly battle in Syria. All male citizens in Russia between ages of 18 and 27 are still required to serve in the military. Despite Putin's best efforts, Russia's military spending ranks 4th in the world after the United States, China, and India. Aside from hard power weapons, Russia appears to be developing effective hybrid warfare against its adversaries, employing diplomacy, hacking, social media, and other measures in addition to military might. This capability, which is more difficult to get than creating weapons, demonstrates Russia's modernization of warfare. Russian journalist and military commentator Pavel Felgenhauer agrees, warning that real-life battles are influenced by a variety of factors, including geography and people involved. Many areas of current military technology include drone design and production, electronic components, radar, and satellite reconnaissance are deficient in Russia, according to Felgenhauer. Russia, for instance, is now manufacturing surveillance drones under an Israeli license, but has no assault drone capacity. Russia is also working to modernize its command and control centers, which are responsible for processing combat data and disseminating it to troops. Moscow spent at least $500 million per year in the United States in the years building up to the showdown with the West, shopping for so-called double-use merchandise, which can be used both for the military and civilian objectives. Faced with the embargo imposed by the West, Russia is attempting to create its own drones and bridge the technology gap in other sectors. According to observers, the collapse of the Soviet Union left Moscow weaker not only in terms of area and army numbers, but also in terms of military suppliers. On the other hand, the Soviet Union's legacy is still very much alive in modern Russian army, since many of its cutting-edge systems are the outgrowth of good old Soviet systems and their upgrading. The decade-old Su-25 attack plane, built to help ground troops, is one such weapon. The latest version of the aircraft has recently commenced production in Russia. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other videos.